everyone. Thanks for listening to another episode of DIB Innovators. Today, I've got a great guest, Arun Nair, founder and CEO at OpsLabs. Arun, thanks for chatting with me today.
Thanks, David. Thank you so much for having me here.
This is great. Our networks intersect quite a few different places, but this is a great story, so I want to just jump right into it. So, Arun, you originally from India, but then you spent some time on Wall Street, working there, and then bam, started your own company called OpsLabs. Talk to me about, what you were doing, cool things that you learned, or, and where you saw a need, to create OpsLabs, which we'll get into a little bit on what OpsLabs does in a minute.
Yeah, happy to talk about that. So before starting OpsLabs, I spent about 11 years in fintech. I was building trade execution platforms for large sell-side banks. Mainly, I worked on 3 asset classes: fixed income, foreign exchange, and commodity trading. And was mainly a C++ programmer. Worked mainly on the execution side of the platform. And then had some opportunities to do some product ownership and M&As as well for the last company I worked for. And started OpsLabs 6 years ago in Austin, Texas. And when we got started, our focus was more on the commercial side. We're working with the commercial airlines. And my co-founder, Sujeev, he actually had, after his PhD in industrial engineering, he had worked in the commercial airline sector. And actually, I met Sujeev in grad school in Texas A&M College Station 18 years ago, where I was in business school and he was doing his PhD. He had spent about 8 years after his postdoc working on commercial airlines, operations world, where he was kind of obsessed with resolving disruptions in airline operations. So when we got started, because of his expertise in airline operations and my expertise in building large scale platforms, low latency platforms, we started building a SaaS enterprise platform for managing airline operations. And then we got extremely lucky and got the chance to showcase that work to the leadership in Air Force, which was also actually physically located in Austin, in the same building where we work. And that's kind of got our journey on this dual use tech company from there.
Very cool. So talk to me about them. What do you guys do?
Yeah. So at OpsLabs, we specialize in air operations optimization, which in practice means we build software for managing day-to-day flight operations. And it's the system that helps airlines manage their airplane scheduling. On top of it, they do crew scheduling and then to manage passengers and cargo. And the same concept, even on the Air Force side, we work with about 70 plus squadrons where they use the software for managing their airplane scheduling. Then they manage their pilots on top of it. But then with the Air Force, we learned that they have 10 more different assets that have to be very tightly scheduled and on a daily basis managed so that the flight operations can run smoothly. So we essentially help both these industry verticals manage their operations.
Do you incorporate maintenance into that?
Not yet. So we essentially ingest the information from maintenance as far as how many airplanes they can support in the morning, afternoon, and the night.
Is that a manual thing they have to do right now?
Currently, it is manual because we were asked to first focus pretty much on the flying squadron side, make sure their day-to-day operations are automated. And the next phase is where we are now starting to work with maintenance applications so that we can directly import some of the information. And at the end of the day, after the sortie completions, we can push the data back into maintenance as well.
That is very cool. Well, back in my day, we used PECs and GTMs.
Yeah.
Maybe still around, I don't know. But, for managing, the pilots and the schedule.
Yeah.
It didn't go much deeper. It was pretty shallow on, capability, which was struggles. And training, tracking training, and different things like that. Where is your big differentiator from, I'd say, an outcome perspective? We'll talk about the underlying tech and why. From an outcome perspective, what's different with OpsLabs?
Yeah, Dave, I'm sorry to hear that you also had to experience PECs and GTMs. It was very shocking when we started working with the Luke Air Force Base. That was the first base where we started 5-6 years ago. And then we had the opportunity to sit with about 40 plus more Air Force bases. And it was very surprising to see that not only these pilots and air crew, they fly all day practicing their mission and such, making sure they're staying combat mission ready. After the end of all of that, they have to come back to the squadron scheduling shops. And then they spend 4 or 5 more hours in the evening just fixing the flight schedules for the upcoming day.
It's miserable. It is miserable. That's what you send your lieutenants to do. If you have a big board with magnetic pucks and you're moving.
Yeah. And if you were to draw the parallels with commercial airline sector, you would never see a captain from Delta fly and then also manage the schedule at the end of the day, right? So it was shocking for us to see that in the armed forces, it's these expensive assets. Pilots are expensive, right? And they are actually, unfortunately, doing all the manual scheduling and operations work as well. So when we got started, we learned that it's one thing to build a long range plan for the squadron, the next 4 or 5 weeks of flight schedules. But then it's extremely difficult to manage the day-to-day disruptions. So you, on the day of the flight, you have the maintenance telling you they cannot support this weapons load, or
weather cancels.
Yeah, exactly. Or your air range that you were promised is not conducive for the weather, right? So your whole house of cards collapses, right? And it's a very painful process to scramble the jigsaw puzzles together late in the night, right? And they're stressed because it's one thing to build a legal solution. I mean, you, of course, have to make sure the pilot crew rest is given. If it's a syllabus-based execution, your prerequisites have been completed, right? It's a fairly complex thing to put a legal solution together. But then the DO, the director of operation, will come and say, hey, it's not meeting my priorities. I have to balance my continuation training with the air task order that just landed on my desk, with the upgrades that are happening. How do you balance all of that?
Or you have the DO that says, I'm flying in that line.
Yeah. Or I have a VIP coming next week. And now, right, it's these instructor pilots who are struggling to, do all this manually. And they're not able to think through all the macro objectives to make sure every sortie is meeting the objective of increasing your combat readiness, right? So that's where we kind of got obsessed. We decided, okay, this is the biggest pain point. We want to make sure these pilots and air crew can focus on their true mission, and they can essentially get some intelligence to manage this on a daily basis, right? So we first started with resolving disruptions. That's how we initially got started. And we were able to not only create a legal solution, but we were also able to ingest the priorities from the DO, the director of operation, right? Where the DO can then say, hey, I have these air task orders competing with some continuation training imposed by the tracking memorandum. And I have these 3 syllabus running, right? And then we were able to then create the schedule at a click of a button and recreate it every day as well, right? So that was kind of the genesis of how we got started.
That is very cool. How hard is it to figure out the dysfunctional organization of a squadron, how this process runs? Because it's not easy unless you're living it.
No, I mean, I'll be honest. We were very lucky that some of these initial Air Force bases, the instructor pilots and the schedulers were very patient with us. They taught a lot about, how this is truly done. We actually even hired some schedulers who were leaving Air Force, so they joined our team. So that also helped the cause a lot. But then, Dave, in honesty, the journey was very interesting, where initially we were able to build a solution and start helping with that legal solution that could be given to the schedulers, right? But then the journey of getting from that point to taking the feedback for 4 years from the 75 plus squadrons to then further calibrate the algorithm, that's the most fun part of the journey was, right? And it did take us 4 years to get to that point.
So how do you, because with all the, what I love about software, SaaS products, is the ability to iterate and change, pivot. How were you able to take in something that's a very manual process? Because I guess GTMs and PECs, I don't know if you were pulling that data in, but a very manual process to be able to pull that back in, get the feedback so that you can iterate on that.
So the way we approached it was, it's kind of a 3-layered intelligence that we built. The first foundational layer is utilizing this field of mathematics called operations research. Operations research, OR, it allows you to take hard constraints like the number of sorties you have, number of pilots you have, and then you have a bunch of hard constraints like the crew rest and the syllabus flow or the wrap tracking memorandum requirements, right? OR can really do a good job of working with these hard constraints, look at the competing priorities, and give you a solution, right? And that got us to a point of that 30% acceptance rate, where every time you hit create schedule, out of 100 times, only 30 times the instructor pilot was happy with it. He was like, okay, this is legal and it is useful. The remaining 70%, they were saying it's legal, but it's not useful, you know? So that's where the next layer of AI helped, where the whole reinforcement learning using human feedback was extremely pivotal to us, where all these instructor pilots and schedulers every day gave ton of feedback. Like every day we were like collecting hundreds of feedback on every click, right? And that's where AI is really good at that qualitative improvement in the performance, right? Where it's not only able to work with very pedantic, hard constraints, but understand that it's kind of art of scheduling, right? It's a bit more nuanced than just saying, okay, this is a legal solution. It was able to then factor in what is important to the deal. How can we take those very subjective goals and then convert them into very tactical actions at the sortie level, right? And that was a second layer. And then the third layer is the LLM layer, which is making it easier for the end user to talk to the system, where they're able to say, hey, simulate a scenario where next month maintenance is saying I'm losing 20% of my fleet. And I have an ATO on my desk, which is asking for 6 F-16 pilots to be trained on these 15 currencies. How do you simulate my combat readiness for the remaining squadron, which also is going through continuation training, right? So that level of back and forth is possible with the LLM models, but then it's still utilizing under the hood the foundational algorithms that were built, which can generate the schedule within seconds. So that's kind of how the journey was, going from OR model, adding the layer of AI and the LLM on top.
Very cool. Did you create your own LLM or are you using external?
We have a self-contained LLM that we are training, specifically for air ops. So at this point, what our next phase is looking like is we're building this middleware layer very specific to air operations. And we're training the model so that if we are adding more applications in the future on this middleware, which is a horizontal layer, then all of it is optimized for agentic workflow, but very much tailored to air operations use case, right? I'll give you another example that's very exciting. We just started working with US Navy. It's an F-18 squadron. And at the air operations command layer, you're kind of combining the air power from US Air Force and US Navy, right? And then generate the air task order. So using this middleware layer, we would be able to bring these air power from different branches onto the same platform. So that's history I have in my previous life, building that middleware layer for trade execution, where we build these platforms for high frequency trade execution, where they all would kind of publish and subscribe. We call them pub sub model, where you could have hundreds of applications sitting on top of this layer, and you publish the data that you want to publish only to the players that are subscribed to that data, right? And that allows for a very rapid, high frequency execution. And that's the same notion we are bringing for air operations now.
Very cool. So when you look at the number of hours, so like I'll use, again, this is dated a little bit, but 5 pilots sitting in a room for 12 hours. Now, some of them leave for a go flight. They come back 5 days a week, moving magnetic pucks around, changing the entire week when Tuesday falls out because, the runway gets taken out for weather or whatever. What have you seen from like a results metric or KPIs? What are saving, squadron? And again, this may have changed with, as we got further into after I left GTMs and PECs and whatever other products. What kind of KPIs of savings of just like that manpower are you able to take that off of pilots, for schedulers? I mean, they started to commercialize or contract schedulers out as well.
I mean, David, in fact, it's going the other way around where they are actually letting go of the schedulers and it's falling back on the pilots, the whole scheduling and managing the operations. And yes, we were able to quantify the savings. It's at around 200 hours per squadron per month. Per month. And that is the time that these pilots are getting back and these air crew are getting back to fly more or instruct the students more, right? That could be the way they spend the time. From here, our goal is to then even look at the throughput of training and look at how many sorties we're able to generate based on the limited number of assets we have, right? The limited number of airplanes. The air range is extremely tight and limited. So are we able to increase the throughput of training? And that is the next goal we have to, focus on that area.
That's awesome. So has it been challenging because, 75 squadrons, there aren't 75 fighter squadrons, which was fighter squadron. So you're covering multiple MDSs, different requirements, RAP, or I forget what that's, readiness.
Crew program, yeah.
Yeah. The currencies required and, the number of types of sorties you have to do. I was an air-to-air guy. I needed to do a certain number of BFM missions.
Yeah.
It's 1v1 a month or large-scale missions. How do you put those if you put those requirements, that's very different from organizations. Was that an easy transition using, your current models? And
thanks for asking that. That definitely was a very interesting challenge. We started with smaller aircrafts, the fighter planes with single or double seats. That was a pretty big challenge to automate that first. And then we went from the fighter planes to other MDS like B-52 bombers that have 3 compartments and up to 8 crew positions. And as you highlighted, their mission sets are very different. And their currencies that they can hack by flying that mission is very different. So that was fairly challenging to go from fighter planes to the bigger planes like bombers. But once that challenge was solved, then going to a C-130 was not that hard because you have 3 compartments there as well. You have 7 to 8 crew positions there as well. And the formations are similar in terms of, if you have an instructor, you could have 2 different instructors teaching 2 different types of students. So those could also be easily managed. So that kind of scaling became easier as we scaled out to more platforms. And then the latest challenge we are tackling is the unmanned. So now we're trying to work with MQ-9 and RQ-4. And that definitely is a very different challenge. And their sortie durations are 22 hours, 24 hours. So that's where we are now finalizing the customizations. But at this point, the platform is scaling fairly well. We can handle new aircraft types very well. We can work with the formal training units, undergraduate schools, or we could work with combat units, operations units. We can work with different types of objectives that DOs work with. So that part of the scaling is going really well.
Very cool. So you're focused on scheduling, I would say a squadron, generally a training environment. Can you identify, have you been able to, one of the things, you run a software company,
Mm-hmm.
You have KPIs, you have leading indicators, you have trailing indicators, things that go, business is great right now, but in 3 months we are bumming.
Yeah.
Because the pipeline's dried up, or whatever your, leading indicators are. Are you able to do that for squadrons where they go, hey, you may be meeting all your, checking off all your boxes, but you are going to be in a world of hurt based on the number of pilots leaving, the number of pilots come in, the new training regimen. Are you able to shape that to give the commander or the DO warning that you've got a giant tidal wave about ready to hit you in the face? Have you gotten to that point?
Yeah, that is definitely the most exciting next phase of our growth. So we are doing a lot of work around predicting the readiness. We are working a lot on this kind of scenarios that I was mentioning earlier, where I could work with an ATO, and on top of that, I could overlay some maintenance issues, and then indicate what happens if I also lose some instructor pilots, right? So that kind of scenario simulation is something we are focusing a lot on. That's one area of exciting growth. And the second area of growth is for the past 5 years, we've been focusing a lot on the tactical level, at the unit level, focusing pretty much on the flying squadrons requirement. Now we are taking the work to the next level, which is trying to support air operations command centers. And how could we work with US Navy and US Air Force, but combine their air power and help with the generation of ATO as well. We are also working with some NATO member nations. That's pretty exciting. Countries like Poland, Finland, Norway, UK, and Sweden have taken interest in what we're doing. So that's also an exciting phase of growth.
Amazing. Yeah. So you're taking it up to, so a squadron deploys or a unit deploys. We're in combat operations. You can pull that in and help organize, help inform the ATO of this is what we need. And based on the constraints of X unit, we're going to be short on, surface to air missile suppression. We need to pull another asset from somewhere else, whatever it is, to fill that gap.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
Powerful.
Yeah. A lot of the new research that's coming out in AI is the models are not the bottleneck. That's what I'm learning. These models are getting churned out very quickly, but testing these models at the operational level and capturing that feedback loop from the end user to calibrate your algorithms further, that is the more exciting work. That's a framework kind of we establish in OpsLab, was to factor in that loop very quickly.
Have you been able to integrate into a lot of F-22, F-35? They're able to plug a system into the jet, pull down the maintenance data from the airplane. Have you gotten to the point where you can ingest data like that to start incorporating that into your models of availability and helping maintenance on that side?
That is something that has been asked by our end users. The squadrons, they have asked us that, can we collect that information? Because a lot of times pilots will fly and they will find some issues with the aircraft, right? In whatever objectives that they're performing. They often have to log this manually for the...
No, I remember you land and you start around, you don't go back and take off your gear. You sit in the room, you type on a computer like, this is what I saw. And then a maintenance guy comes over and is like, I wonder what that could be. And then he creates some tickets manually on paper, now probably his computer, to go do something. Then you have your automated ones that feed it.
Yeah.
It just becomes like 50 different things they're supposed to go look at, but the airplane's supposed to fly in an hour.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's something that they have asked us to look into. We have not started working on that yet.
Yeah, definitely. Well, it sounds like you're well on the way of being able to do that, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. No, definitely, yes.
Let's go back to business side. You got this idea on the airline side. By the way, how's your airline business? What does that look like?
It's doing well as well. So for the past few years, we have been focusing a lot more on the US Air Force use case. With this current round of fundraising, we are starting to go and focus more on the commercial airline side as well. But we have finished building that product for the airlines. We would love to even, go back and commercialize that too.
That's great. So two guys at business school have a great idea. You're not the first ones. How did you go get money? Like, what talk to me about your fund? Because that's a big challenge, right? When you're building, especially enterprise software, a large platform kind of disruptors. What's your fundraising, or how'd you capitalize your ability to build this out and follow up with like how big's your team right now? How did you?
Yeah. So we have about 18 people in Austin office, 6 contractors who do things like bookkeeping and accounting and such. Most are full-times or PhDs in operations research and software engineers. Historically, the first round of funding was done by friends and family, a bunch of people we know. And those were the angel rounds of funding. About 2 million is how we raised that. And then we learned how to navigate the SBIR track, got some non-dilutive funding from Air Force and DIU and such. And that helped us build the product to a point where we could get Phase III contracts and start really deploying the software for operational use, right? And that was the signal that helped VCs take interest in us. And that's where we raised about 9 million from 2 VCs over the past 2 years. Those were price rounds, and those happened after the Phase III contracts were deployed. That helped us get to this point where now we are actively participating in program of record conversations to replace GTMs and PECs. And that's like next couple of years of journey. At this point, we are now raising our Series A to focus more on scaling with US Air Force, scaling with US Navy, and the NATO member nations. That's exciting as well. And the middleware concept that I was talking about, that's a pretty big investment in engineering side, and go back to commercial airlines as well. That's kind of the roadmap ahead of us.
So you have a chance of being one of the success stories that have worked with AFWorks to actually there's an opportunity to become a program of record.
There is, yes. AFWorks has been extremely kind to us in terms of educating us on how to navigate this whole SBIR track and introducing us to end users when we needed to, deploy our software for Phase III. The Spark cells were extremely impactful. And we also got lucky where the folks we worked with at all these bases, they were extremely intelligent and motivated folks because they want to solve this problem. The whole squadron scheduling was a painful thing to handle. So we definitely got lucky on that side.
Luck, timing, and hard work, right? That's it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Puts it together.
Yeah. No, it's been a very fun journey. I mean, I do compare my times working on the Wall Street, the kind of folks I got a chance to work with, extremely intelligent, fast-paced. And I would compare that similarly with Air Force folks too, extremely intelligent, very fast-paced, and very motivated people to work with. So it's been a fun journey.
That's cool. You don't hear that relationship that a Wall Street guy is similar to an Air Force fighter pilot,
I mean, they're very similar personalities.
Yeah, there probably is some truth to that. That's amazing. What's your biggest lesson learned trying to navigate the SBIR process?
I think when we got started, this may be a little bit of a spicy feedback, but yeah, when we got started, we were informed that getting to Phase III was kind of the holy grail. Once you get to Phase III, that's like you made it.
Yeah, you're done. You've crossed the chasm of death.
Yeah, and maybe back then that was true, and the valley of death was defined somewhere between Phase II and Phase III, right? Because you had to get money from the end user for Phase III. The color of money changes there. And that was a big challenge back then. But in our personal experience, we learned that it's the program of record, which is truly the holy grail. Phase III is also kind of part of the research and development lifecycle. That's how we should think about it, is the wings can sponsor phase IIIs for maybe a year or two, or maybe 3 in our case. But that's not a long-term strategy, right? New startups and new small businesses getting on this journey should be aware of that it's from Phase III to program of record is a very big challenge. We should be prepared with the right funding in place. We should prepare to navigate the ecosystem inside the department, because there's a different colors of money that you can work with. So learning how to work with all of that to continue sustaining the journey is hard. So that is something that I would definitely point out.
So from your perspective, startup doing some cool stuff and trying to get with the military, there's a lot of ways to outsource, talent to figure this out. So you've got your SBIR consulting companies that help you write those. You've got folks that will help you get things put in the NDA, or or kind of your lobbyist type consulting. Right. You then have advisors that know the inner workings, but really have, they may be influencers. And how did you tackle this? And where do you think, your most valued, I'd say, relationship or contractor, and kind of figuring out how to do that? Where did you see the most value? Or maybe it was all, I don't know, but love your perspective on that.
No, Dave, for us, absolutely, these partnerships and advisors and government affair lobbying firms, they all play a very instrumental role. One example I often talk about is Second Front. I mean, they were absolutely instrumental in getting us deployed. Our advisors...
You needed an ATO to work in kind of sensitive environment.
Yeah. That's right. And then our advisors are extremely kind with mentorship and getting involved in helping set the strategy, helping decide, hey, as we are scaling, start working with a specific matchcom because now they are going to be influencing the decision and such, right? So that level of thinking was extremely influential. And then, of course, public affairs, Andy or helps us from Blue Wing Impact. And then we have had some help on the government affairs side as well recently, which I would suggest small business should start investing in that sooner than later. So yeah, all of these partnerships for a small business like ours was extremely impactful.
How'd you figure out how to go to all these folks? I mean, it's not a natural, you don't go, I need a government, I need to go get a government contract, contact these types of people.
I think being in Austin helped a lot because we have AFWorks and DIU and NavalX physically sitting in the same building. So we were exposed to a lot of that early on. And then we learned the importance of having advisors early on as well. And that definitely set the course for us. But yeah, being in Austin physically helped quite a bit.
Are you guys fully, just curious, from a company culture, are you all in office or are you scattered?
No, we are in office culture. Most of the team is sitting here. We do have few folks in Phoenix and New York, but most of the team sits in Austin and we're growing here itself.
We're similar. Are you finding that's a good thing, a bad thing, ability to scale? Like, what do you think from just running the organization, like in office versus not?
Yeah, we have benefited a lot from in-office culture. In fact, a lot of team that has recently joined, they asked for it. They asked, do you have...
We've seen that too. Yeah, they want it.
Yeah, they want that because they were quitting their companies because they were missing that in-office culture. So we definitely lean into it.
That's fantastic. Tell me where OpsLab is in 3 to 5 years.
Well, we hope to have gone enterprise-wide with the US Air Force. We have a vision of at least scaling to 200,000 end users across about 60 Air Force bases. That is the next 2 years. We hope to also have onboarded Navy and have started combining the air power at the AOC level. That's the most imminent goal for the next 2 to 4 years. And we are also hoping to have established the commercial airlines business in a wider scale. And the middleware layer is extremely exciting part of technology advancements that we nerds are passionate about.
Do you think AI is it continually changing how you look at that, or do you have a good roadmap of how you're moving forward and advances in AI, or just continuing to help you, but you've got strong architecture to support it?
I think things definitely have dramatically changed. The way we even built the middleware in our previous lives have dramatically changed to agentic based middleware. So things are absolutely changing at a very fast pace. But I often lean back on the iteration of models is not the bottleneck. It's how quickly can you iterate through the ops tempo. That is the framework we are maturing internally.
Yeah, so good. So if folks want to follow you, because we're going to have to wrap this up here in a little bit, but they want to follow you, they want more information, interested in bringing you into their organization, how best would they do that?
I'm on LinkedIn. You can search for me and Arun Nair, OpsLab, OPSLAB. Or my email is also great to reach out. It's Arun, ARUN, @opslab.com.
So cool.
Yeah.
Well, Arun, I look forward to seeing you again. I know it's been a bit, but super fun. And I love what you're doing, man. I think if you're 18 people, Wing Commander Tyndall, multiple squadrons, I had 18 pilots acting as schedulers.
Yeah, that's right.
And that was one organization. And you're doing this across the Air Force. So super excited for what you're doing in the Air Force, our military, our warfighters, just making them better, more efficient. I applaud you and thank you for those efforts, but look forward to seeing you and sharing a beer sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you, David, for having me. This was a lot of fun talking to you.